Hey, are you thinking about moving to Tiny Township, the tiny beaches? Well, stick around because in this video, I'm going to go through some pros and cons of the not so tiny. Tiny is beautiful. It's so unique in so many ways, and it's got so much good going for it, but it's not for everybody. So stick around so we could talk about some of those pros and cons, just so you're more well aware of everything you need to know before moving to Tiny. If this is your first time on the channel and you want to learn everything there is to know about living in Tiny, make sure you subscribe and tap the bell for notifications. That way you'll be the first to know everything that is happening in Tiny. You'll get to learn more about it. My name's Kevin Da Silva and I'm a local real estate agent, and I get calls all the time for people just like you that are looking to make that lifestyle change to Tiny, whether it's to live there or to cottage there. It doesn't matter. If that's you, reach out to me. It doesn't matter if it's next year, next month, or you simply just want to learn more. All the ways you can reach out to me are in the description box of this video, including a Zoom link where you can book a call directly on my calendar at a time that works for you. Now, let's get on with the pros and cons of living in Tiny. All right, let's start with some pros and cons about just, high level real estate in general and pricing. So Tiny's pricing really depends on how immediately close you are to the water, or if you're on the waterfront, of course. That goes the same for honestly any of the other communities in Georgian Bay, or really any community that's near water. But within Tiny, the pricing really changes, I find, between north and south, like Tiny Beaches Road North, Tiny Beaches Road South. Where that road changes from north to south is at Bomb Beach. So are you in Tiny south of Bomb Beach, on Tiny Beaches Road South, or off of Tiny Beaches Road South? Or are you North Bomb Beach, Tiny Beaches Road North, up to La Fontaine and those areas? Or are you inland Tiny, like Perkinsfield, or are you on the other side of Tiny, over to Swallow Bay? I'm going to be focusing more in this video on the western side of Tiny, more like the Tiny Beaches areas, but we'll touch on whatever comes to mind. So I find that your money will go further. So this is a pro of Tiny. Within Tiny, your money will go further as you go north, and you'll actually I find you get more space house-wise and land-wise for the same dollar value. So as you go north of Bomb Beach, so like let's say you go to, if you're comparing La Fontaine on the north side of Tiny and something like Woodland Beach on the south end of Tiny, the pro would be pricing on the north side. You would get more space typically and land for that same price. Now the con to that on the north side of Tiny, this is tricky because it's pros and cons within the same area, right? The con to that would be you're kind of just further from GTA, if that matters. If that doesn't matter, and you just need to get to a major hub, Midland is very close by. As you get north in Tiny, it's like 15-20 minutes away. You're not going to come all the way back to Wasaga Beach or Collingwood. You're going to head over to Midland and for your day-to-day stuff. So that's something to think about. A con would be that there's actually pretty limited housing in Tiny. There's not really many subdivisions, or it's mostly cottages, cabins. There are a few streets that feel more like, a mature subdivision, but there's just not many of them. And another con to add to that is it feels a little remote. Like I said, you'll probably have to drive over to Midland, or, if you're on the south end of town, you're going to come over to Wasaga. So it's not very walkable. You're definitely going to have to drive anywhere. So it doesn't have that community corner or strip or anything like that. The closest thing they would have to it on the west side of Tiny would be somewhere like Bomb Beach. But that's really just in the summertime. Bomb Beach, just pretty much nothing going on there in the winter. I mean, a couple things stay open. The Bomb Beach Smokehouse stays open, one of my favorite places to go. That is the best view in the summertime, by the way. I'm gonna give Tiny a big pro, almost a pro that no other community in Southern Georgian Bay has, in my opinion. It has the best view for a waterfront dining. The Bomb Beach Smokehouse, you're like 60 feet from the water or 80 feet from the water. There is no other restaurant in Blue Mountain, Collingwood, Wasaga Beach, at least for now in Wasaga Beach, since they're redeveloping. But right now, Tiny has the best view for waterfront dining. Absolutely. So that's a big one. Pros and cons about jobs and employment. Okay. The reality is there's not much going on in terms of, corporate jobs or businesses, like in offices and stuff like that in the township of Tiny. I mean, some people work over at the township and that's about it. Other than that, your people that live in Tiny would probably be traveling to Midland for work, to Barrie for work, some to Collingwood even. That's a bit of a drive. You're getting like an hour at that point, depending on where in Tiny you are. So that would be a con. There's just not much local work, but it would be a big pro if you can work remotely and you don't need to commute much and you're okay with that and working from a home office. Like if your income's not location dependent and you can just work from home, you can have a really nice, serene, peaceful lifestyle, work-life balance. If you live in Tiny, you can work from home. You could be at the beach you can walk to the beach from almost anywhere in Tiny because most of the settlements just follow Tiny Beach's road, close to the water, right? So it would be a pro if you could work remotely in terms of jobs and employment. And it would definitely be a con if you would have to commute much. Some of those side roads in the winter, winter storms, snow squalls, not very fun to drive through. I don't want to scare you. They don't happen all the time. It's bad weather. Actually, I always say we can get like 10 or 15 centimeters of snow up here. Anyway, whether it's Tiny, Wasaga, Collingwood, like any of these areas. And I feel like it's easier to get around with 10 or 15 centimeters here than it is to get around with 1 centimeter anywhere in the GTA. I feel like 1 centimeter of snow in the GTA and it's chaos and nobody could drive and you can't figure it out. Not trying to put anybody down. I just feel like it's just chaos down there with one centimeter. I don't know if it's because there's no space to put it. There's too many buildings and concrete and it's just difficult. Here, I guess there's just more open spaces. So you could just kind of like push things out of the way easier. People get used to driving in it. I find it's pretty easy and pretty good. Proximities and daily lives, daily life and proximity and the pros and cons of that. We touched on that a bit. Basically, the daily life is if you're north side of Tiny, again, you'd be going to Midland or Penetanguishene for some of your day-to-day errands. Barrie, you go to Barrie or Wasaga or Collingwood, but you're going to be driving more when you live in Tiny just because it's a little bit more remote than anything else, any other the neighboring communities that we serve here. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's a pro and a con though. It's a pro con. But and then the con is that there's no walkable downtown core other than, like I said, Bomb Beach. It's summer when the arcade's bumping and there's music playing at the Busk Till Dusk on Thursday nights at Bomb Beach. You got to check that out. There's so many people. That is like almost kind of like a hidden gem. Like it's packed and a lot of people know about it that are in Tiny. When I tell some of my colleagues and friends from Wasaga or Collingwood, like no one had heard of it. And then they go and they find it amazing, and it's really, really cool. Not necessarily a pro or a con, but something to keep in mind that Tiny has no municipal sewers, or for that matter, not really much municipal water lines as well. They do have some municipal water, but very, very few. And so you got to be very comfortable and get comfortable with septic systems, holding tanks, and wells, drilled wells, preferably, and then sometimes there's dug wells. We'll do a whole other segment on wells and septics for Tiny because that is something that people don't always understand, especially when they're shopping for a cottage and they're not from here and they're learning about Tiny. That's something that they heard about it, maybe, but they don't know about it, and they don't know the differences between different wells and different septic systems and just some of the responsibilities that go along with having a septic system, like something basic like you have to pump it, right? Stuff like that. So people it's so foreign to them. So, and that's okay. If it's foreign to you, it's okay. It's all manageable. It's all figure outable. We'll teach you about it and we'll get you comfortable with those kind of systems. If you're a resident, I guess another con would be the seasonal tourism traffic. Now, Tiny Beaches Road is the main road in Tiny, along the beaches there, along Tiny Beaches. And remember, Tiny Beaches, it's called Tiny Beaches because there's a bunch of tiny beaches. and it's not so tiny. So tiny is not so tiny, but all the tiny beaches are really tiny. So there's, you know, Woodland Beach, Blue Water Beach, Balm Beach, LaFontaine Beach. So, but yeah, there's a lot of tourism that comes up on the weekend. Now, the good thing about the tourism that comes up on the weekend is it's mostly cottagers, not day trippers. And what I mean by that is someone that wants to go to the beach for the day, that does not have a cottage up here, there's almost virtually nowhere to park in Tiny. Like, unless you're at Balm Beach and there's, I'm just gonna guess around, I don't know, 70 or 80, 60, 70 parking spots perhaps in Balm Beach that are public and you can park there. Other than that, almost all the parking in Balm Beach is by permit only. Even when there are a few parking spots, and there aren't at all the accesses, there's very few parking spots. So let's say there's 5 or 6 or 10 parking spots at some of the access spots, it's by permit only. So you have to have a cottage or live in Tiny. So that it's, you know, it's a pro. It's a pro for if you live there, because even though there's that con of the you know, the summer tourism traffic, it's not tourism traffic. It might look like it, but it's people that, you know, live there or cottage there, right? That are coming up on the weekend to their second home. Just because there's not that much day trippers. Most of the day trippers, honestly, they go to Wasaga Beach where the really big provincial parking lots are, and they can park their car, grab their cooler, go to the beach. There's just more space for them. Now, Balm Beach has that where you could do that, but a lot of the other access points and tiny beaches, there's only a couple parking spots, and, you know, again, permit only. So it keeps it to kind of local tourists only that come up for the weekend. I mean, yes, there's some people that come up, rent an Airbnb. Remember, for Airbnbs, refer to the Airbnb video about all the bylaws in our communities, because it's not a free-for-all up here. It's one of the most common questions I get is, can I Airbnb this? And a lot of people are surprised. A lot of the times the answer is actually no. It's not always no. There's yeses, but there's processes to a lot of those yeses. So watch that video to get more informed about that. The parking is kind of a unique thing to Tiny. It keeps that quietness, that serene, peaceful Tiny the way it is, because it doesn't get bombarded with tourists. And I don't know, I think that's a pretty cool feature of Tiny. I would say one of the biggest cons of living in Tiny, if you live there and if you have kids, would be the schools. Your kids are going to have to get bussed in, depending on where in Tiny, whether that's Midland if they're on the east side of Tiny, and Midland or Penetanguishene. You know, a lot of kids get bussed into Wasaga, and surprisingly even Collingwood. Elmvale's another option. So just be prepared for longer than normal bus rides for your kids if you're considering living full-time in Tiny. That's a big con. The pro would be that they're going to have an amazing lifestyle, going to the beach all the time and hanging out there. And so there's trade-offs, right? It's like I said in the beginning of the video, Tiny is beautiful, but it's not for everybody. You got to take into account all these things, right? All these pros and cons, and see if you're willing to accept some of those things, put up with some of those things, not put up with one of those things, maybe reevaluate some of those things. Maybe it sounds bad when you listen to it for the first time on this video, but, you know, as we talk about it, maybe it's not so bad. That's why I always encourage us, just have a conversation, book a call with me. Remember, all the ways you could do that are in the description box of this video. You just book a Zoom link. You could book a call, and there's a Zoom link there where you could book a call directly on my calendar at a time that works for you. And we just, you know, we talk this out more on a more personal level. You know, we talk about the things that are in this video, but we adapt it and cater it to you and your family and your wants and your needs. So I would always say that's the best way to take this further. So let's close this out with some high level thoughts on who Tiny is good for and who Tiny is not good for. I would say Tiny is a great fit for you if you want water, space, calmness, privacy in a lot of cases. If you don't mind working remotely, or if you're retired, if you don't mind driving to get you to the amenities, to the nearby towns, to go grocery shopping and to get some social gatherings, if you don't mind doing that, Tiny can be for you. If you value that calm over convenience, Tiny can definitely be for you. Now, Tiny is definitely not for you If you need nightlife, like a town walkability year round, if you have to work in the city, it's a pretty long drive. If you want like new subdivision feel, like new family subdivisions, it doesn't really have that. So Tiny wouldn't be for you in those cases. On the drive time within the not so tiny, I just want to talk about drive time one more time. Even if it's not daily, if you go to the city often, or even if you go to Collingwood often, or Barrie often, or any of those things, if you want to do that, whatever often means to you, by the way, just keep this in mind. If you're on the south end of Tiny, and I'm going to use Barrie as a reference, or no, let's use Collingwood as a reference since we're the Living in Wasaga Beach and Collingwood channel. Let's say you want to go to Collingwood, or Wasaga Beach for that matter, and you're on the south end of Tiny. Wasaga Beach is 5 minutes away, Collingwood is 25 minutes away. If you're in LaFontaine, that changes to basically an hour, just like that. It changes from 20 minutes to an hour. So you got to keep that in mind. And now let's talk about if you're coming from the GTA. If you're coming from anywhere up the, Brampton, Mississauga, anywhere, the further, like let's say Wasaga's an hour and a half from any of those, GTA kind of an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. And the south end of Tiny is maybe an hour and 45 minutes. Well, the north end of Tiny is pushing 2 hours or more. So maybe that's a big deal. Maybe it's not. I mean, if it's a cottage, do you want to do that extra 20-minute drive when you've already been driving in traffic on a Friday? Or if you live here and you do, have to travel to the city, whatever often means for you, you have to be okay with that extra 20-minute drive to the north end of Tiny if you want that. If you want to live there. Remember, you're going to trade off. You're going to get more space up there. For your dollars will stretch further as you go north, or typically. There's always anomalies, but typically it does. But you got to be okay with that extra drive. And it sounds like it's not so bad, it's only 20 minutes, but if you do it often enough, or more often, that 20 minutes can start adding up quite often. You can just really start adding up. So it's just something to think about when you're considering which part of the not so tiny you wanna settle down in. I'm sure I missed a few pros and cons. If there's any other pros and cons that you might think of, make sure you leave a comment. Please leave a comment. If you're a local resident and I missed one, I'm sure there's one you can think of. Leave a comment. I want to keep this conversation going. A very real video, real back and forth comments, real conversations about what it's like to live in Tiny and all the pros and cons attached to that. So please leave a comment. I would really appreciate that, and we'll keep the conversation going. Other than that, that's all I got for today. Until then, I'm looking forward to helping you make a smooth move to the not so tiny.